Welcome to the second season of Hidden Gem or Hidden Trash. Today we'll meet a bunch of troublesome RPGs with mixed reception. Why? Well, we'll see. My job will be to find out if they deserve better ratings or worse. So let's begin. Let's start with Souls of Chronos. This indie action RPG is the first contender today. It was developed by Chinese studios Astrolabe Games and Futu Studios. It was released on all modern platforms a couple of months ago, but I played the Switch version, so let's find out if it's any good or not. The story puts you in the shoes of Seed in a post-apocalyptic world. There are a few rival gangster groups running things in town now, and he's part of one of them, so he and his partner Tori get sent to do different jobs and quests as the main story progresses darkly. It's not really a quest-driven game, it's story-driven, but of course it does have its bunch of random side quests. Anyway, Tori is actually a species called Chronos, beings capable of manipulating time, something that comes into battle. It has decent and interesting character design and a world building that slowly expands into unknown territories and lost memories. Combat is action under an isometric perspective. You have to constantly move around to avoid enemy attacks, while you counter back with either sword, shotgun or gun attacks. You have a dash button which you'll use all the time to dodge while attacking. I found using guns the most fun and responsive form of offense. Tori fights by herself and she's the only party member you'll ever have. If you, however, use her ability to stop time, it only does for a few seconds where you control her. You have to approach your enemies to do as much damage as you can to one or various enemies if they're nearby. A classic variety of RPG features are present here, like synthesizing items, cooking, and of course, improving your weapons with materials and money. So the positive things are as follows: dark and mature story, interesting real-time combat, good character design. Unfortunately, Souls of Chronos fails in many areas. While the story is the best part of the game, the English localization is all over the place. Often you find nonsensical dialogue thanks to a poor translation with typos or sentences that are out of context. The interface is also very wacky. Controls and menus are sometimes either delayed or cut out quickly by accidentally pressing a button. I get that it's an indie game with low budget, but Astrolabe Games has done a lot of them already, so these problems need to be addressed as soon as possible. Gameplay-wise, the combat is cool, but it suffers from two major negatives. First, your stats are always lower than the enemies, and with just a few hits you die easily. Like many indie RPGs out there, balance is all over the place, with you killing everything in seconds sometimes or the enemies ganging up on you at others. It can be quite grindy. And second, the hit detection is very flawed. Often you don't know if you hit them or hell if they hit you. Like I said, Tori is your only ally, so I feel like every other interesting character in the game was kinda wasted. Plus, they barely get any development at all, especially since you can complete the game in less than 8 hours. I like short indie RPGs, but this one had so much potential, I feel it needed to be longer. So the negatives are as follows: mediocre translation, troublesome interface, troublesome controls, lack of good balance, and too short for its own good. I really wanted to like this game because it hooked me up right from the start, but as I progressed, I kept finding nothing but issues. Eventually I gave up and turned the game off for good. It hurts, but it's wasted potential. Sadly, I deem this game as hidden trash. Edge of Eternity. Our next contender, developed by French studio Midgar Studio, is Edge of Eternity, a turn-based RPG that doesn't look indie at all, even though it still is. Just like the previous game, it was released across all modern platforms. I played the PS4 version, so let's find out if it's good or not. Mixing medieval fantasy and science fiction elements, Edge of Eternity has a story about an advanced race that has invaded the world. Your character, Darion, is a soldier that goes rogue after all his companions are killed or kidnapped. So after ditching the army, he finds his sister and both start a quest to find a cure for their sick mother. It's a good story. The game's graphics are beautiful. I'm not sure how big the budget was, but they achieved at least a AA looking game, almost AAA. Character design is alright for the 3D models, but I did the 2D drawings of each. It's a bit of an open world game. You can just lose yourself navigating through the overworld and getting involved into all sorts of quests, or you can just focus on the main story. It is story driven after all. Combat in this game is played in turns, with a small grid interface that reminded me of Wild Arms 4 and 5. You see, you move in hexes even though there's an active time battle like the old Final Fantasy games. It plays a lot with the elements, so obviously attacking from an advantageous element spices your strategy up. While not innovative, their take on the system is unique. I honestly liked it more than I thought I would. Soundtrack is partially composed by my musical hero Yasunori Mitsuda, so some themes here are nice, not outstanding but nice nonetheless. So the positives are: great premise with a good story, unique battle system, beautiful graphics, open world exploration done right, and Yasunori Mitsuda. When this game came out on consoles, it had a crap ton of technical issues. Glitches were there, like this one for example. I mean, seriously? Most of the problems have been fixed with a few patches, but to think they released the game like this is worrisome. What happened to quality assurance? I said the story was good, but not without some really slow pacing. Once the prologue chapter ends and Darien meets his family, it starts getting kinda boring. Eventually you regain interest with some events though, so it's nothing that bad. I think most of the issues come straight from its combat. Indie games tend to have balancing problems, and this is no exception. It mixes some stupidly easy battles with some stupidly hard-ass battles, all in the same areas. I love turn-based combat, but some of these encounters can take freaking forever. It also has some annoying boss battles, not exactly difficult, just with requirements that feel like a chore. This game includes some puzzles that utilize the battle interface to complete. Some are actually entertaining, others are frustrating. Also something not really negative but not positive either. Characters are just okay. I like this girl here, but I have to admit dialogue for everyone can be somewhat generic at times. Anyway, so the negatives are slow pacing, not so interesting characters, balancing issues, puzzles can get annoying, and some bosses are boring or just frustrating. The game has a bunch of negatives for sure, and I honestly disliked a lot the specific things you needed to do with some bosses. However, I think the other negatives can be either tolerated or even overlooked if you give this one a chance. It's definitely not the best indie RPG out there, but its unique ideas, its production values, and its combat make it worth your while. Therefore, I deem this game as a hidden gem. Moving on to Suiken, Woven Web of the Century. Most of you probably didn't know this game existed, the last Suiken ever created. That's because it never came out of Japan and remained exclusive to the PSP. Nonetheless, it's been fully fan translated, and as a die-hard Suiken fan, I just had to play it. So let's see if it was worth the wait. This is a spin-off. Konami wasn't ready to keep going with the mainline series, so they tried once again something different. It's standalone and completely disconnected from any other game in the series. Every century, an ancient evil destroys the world, but some people who know that want to stop that cycle from repeating. So one day, the protagonist and his friends are transported 100 years back in time by one of those people. The goal of the game will be to recruit allies from both the present and the past to build an army to face the enemy empire and stop the ancient evil. Except that you cannot physically recruit the heroes from the past. Those are stars of destiny that only join by teaching their secret techniques to one of your characters from the present. Who would have thought that a slightly generic plot will turn out to be so engaging because of this mechanic? Of course, you need a guide to get every star of destiny or their techniques. Also, the translation here is really well done. Barely any grammar mistakes, the sentences and dialogue make a lot of sense, it's great. It also has very memorable characters, including your MC, who isn't silent like other Suiken protagonists. Battle system is played in turns, and thankfully the 6 party member feature is back, including the support characters. Formations return as well, so it's important to strategize with the positioning of some characters. I like this combat, it isn't exactly unique, but it gets the job done and it's fun. Finally, I want to praise the music. I honestly wasn't expecting it to have some really solid themes. So positives then are great handling of storytelling, memorable characters, solid turn-based combat, nice music, and unique recruitment for a Suiken game. Now, perhaps the game's biggest flaw by far is the exploration. Dungeons and areas are alright, nothing special, but that's not the problem. Camera sucks bananas here big time. It'll take you a while to get used to it, and it will never feel right, not even once. You fight with it a lot and it hinders movement, but anyway, being a spin-off also lets you know things will be different from mainline games. Once again, there's only one type of battle system instead of 3 like in the others. I wish at least strategy battles would have come back, but maybe it was too much to ask for a game with not too much budget. Konami was ready to abandon the series for good, and sadly, that's exactly what happened here. Now, I said combat is fine, and I don't take that back, but the game's way too easy. I think I found 2 or 3 slightly difficult battles. Without difficulty settings, you can't control how much of a breeze it is to play the game. You know what, it's fine by me, but I know it's gonna be an issue for some of you. Lastly, I guess a very minor complaint is about the magic system. You see, you need to buy projectiles for every magic user, and you can also craft them, else they can't do shit in battle. Not sure why they implemented this feature cause it's dumb, but I'll tell you this. You will very rarely run out of materials because they're dirt cheap in stores and crafting is done quickly. So the overall negatives are horrendous camera, only one battle system, the game's very easy, and it's a silly magic system. And that's it. Like I said, I have no problem with the game being easy, or maybe it was easy for me because I recruited every single character and got every single Star of Destiny technique. The magic stuff is dumb, but it's just as dumb as my complaint. The only true nuance is the camera, but there's no way in hell that's enough to poorly rate this game. And I guess it gets away without the other combat systems by being a low-budget spin-off. But as such, it's a great game. So obviously I deem this game as a hidden gem. Finally, Car Battler Joe. Alright, the rarest JRPG on the Game Boy Advance, nowadays going for a whopping $350 complete in box, almost 200 loose. Holy shit, man! It's gotta be good to be worth all that money, right? Developed by company Ancient, known for creating a lot of early Sega games, and published by Natsume. Never released in Europe, only Japan and North America got it. And it's a car RPG. You heard that right, a car JRPG. Not the first one doing it. Auto Duel for the Atari is one of the earliest examples, but yeah, this one plays exactly like a role-playing game except you fight in a car. The overall plot is about Joe, who wants to be a driver and a mechanic, so he gets to customize his car and perform random jobs to get money in order to upgrade it. Both the customization and leveling up system found in most RPGs is present, but obviously the former is the core of the game. It's got a story, characters and such, but it's mostly a quest-driven game. You'll be going back and forth between towns to accept quests and report to clients, with an overworld in between. In this overworld, you'll drive around with your car and fight enemies. Depending on the weapons you have equipped and other stuff you equip your car with, your movement, maneuvering and offense will vary. Rebel drivers are out there to get you, so you can either attack them to destroy them or ignore them and get to your destination. Music by Yuzo Koshiro is decent, by the way. It's kinda funky and gets things going more interesting. So the positives are: it's a damn racing RPG! It has decent soundtrack and unique ideas, even though they aren't exactly 100% original. Now, let's face reality here, it got positive reviews but nearly nobody truly played it. or my guess is that they just played it for a bit and gave it a decent review. Probably they didn't notice the game's repetitive as hell with tons of forgettable characteristics. For starters, I couldn't remember the story at all until I went back to play it again. It's just not memorable, and the characters are just kinda there with silly humor but nothing truly funny. But that shouldn't matter if the whole point of the game is that it's a freaking car JRPG. However, it fails to deliver an entertaining adventure because it's full of dumbass fetch quests, so like I said, you go back and forth between two towns at first with the exact same overworld in between, and you fight the same enemies over and over and over again. Besides, combat should be the highlight, right? Instead, it's a poor man's excuse for a driving sim with questionable controls and boring combat. It should be full of exaggerated attacks and explosions because honestly, nobody's gonna play this game for the story, so why shy away from blasting action? And you just fight again and again while getting from point A to point B while falling asleep. I wish I could say it's exciting, but it isn't. Negatives? Boring story, repetitive gameplay, forgettable characters, lazy design, lame driving and combat. I cannot believe for the love of me that this is the holy grail JRPG on the GBA. Not even its car customization can save it. It's one of the most forgettable JRPGs I've played in my life, so it's no surprise I deem this car RPG as hidden trash. So those were today's contenders for the start of the second season of Hidden Gem or Hidden Trash. More obscure RPGs are out there waiting to be judged, so I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share the news that the show is back. See you next time!